How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the stream. Let's see here. Just get some stuff set up for us. How's everyone keeping? Fill me in. What are you being up to? What are you sculpting? What are you ZBrushing? There we go. And we have you. There we go. Now we're all set. So, we're going back to Hellboy after last week's. It's like my Yoda cup. I became a godfather and got a Yoda cup to mark the occasion. And some good Irish tea. Hey, Chris. Cool, yeah. We'll just let it ramp up, let a couple of people get in there. There's a few joining now. Bilal, how are you, buddy? Yes, we're going to keep going. Sorry, with the Hellboy sculpt we were doing a couple of weeks ago. Pietro, Mari, how's it going? High popular. Oh, nice. Yeah, so we're going to keep going with the Hellboy sculpt. Someone had asked me about doing the cloth, so we might get into that a little bit today. Yeah, sure me out, because I did a little bit after the stream last time we were working on this, and I left it off. I know I said I wanted to do some of the cloth, some of the, like, wrinkles. I think from the last one I added in like a shorts and a belt, just like a strap around the, like a, essentially the start of a belt. And I think I added this piece to his collar. So we'll keep moving with him anyway, sure. Oh yeah, and I had to fix, for anyone who watched that last stream, and we were trying to get the Z mesh just right. Is this made to scale? No, not yet. No, not quite yet. I'll at the point that I want to render, I can scale them up. And then he will be, yeah. So, if anyone remembers the last stream, or one of the last streams, we were trying to get we were Z-meshing and projecting so that all was one piece. So obviously he's missing his arm there, but you get the idea. So everything was one piece. And in true fashion, as is always a bit of a pain, the corner of the mouth, the eyes can be too. And I got it to where it was okay, but I went back in after and redid that just to get it, because it takes a bit of time, which I don't want to be doing on the stream because it'd be boring you guys. And you can see there now that it's following it's before we had basically exploding polys in there, where there was polys pointing in every direction from the projection of the high poly to the low. So I went in and fixed that up just by essentially smoothing and pulling it back and reprojecting, and smoothing and pulling it back and reprojecting. And it takes, it can take a couple of minutes. It can take like 20 minutes or something just to get the projection right around the eyes and the mouth corner and stuff. And that was the only reason I didn't do it on the stream. I just didn't want to be boring you guys while sitting there watching me do that again and again until it got working. But the other thing I wanted to do, well, the other thing I was kind of back and forth about, this hair on his face was very much a kind of placeholder. I think there's a different material on that. let's fix that. Let's go with paintbrush. I had the paintbrush binded to the 5 key. Stick. Let's see. Yes, yeah. So I'm just using the ZBrush paint. The ZBrush materials are quite nice. We're looking for some nice materials. Yeah, so when I did the first stream with Hellboy, was that one was when we did the head, and I kind of just threw in the hair real quick, and I was thinking, will I go back in and redo the hair? And I am considering Remeshing is asking, is it going to be an action figure? So I was debating, I am considering printing this guy. So I was kind of debating, I should, if I'm going to print him, then I need to go back in and actually sculpt this hair a little bit better. But then again, if I don't, I'll probably, if I'm gonna go the full way and just render him, then I might actually do groom. In which case, you know, refining the sculpted hair is not. Rizwan, very good. Hey Rizwan, welcome to the stream, buddy. Yeah, so you know what I mean. So I don't want to. If I'm gonna do groom, which I'm gonna be using curves to generate a groom, then doing the hair, refining the hair is kind of a waste of time at this point. So we'll come back to it. We'll leave it for now and come back to it. See what happens. I think that's our angle there, something like that. Let's do a quick render. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Something I forgot to do. We'll check the body, make sure everything's working. I still have to do the hand as well, so we'll see about that. Yeah, so let's get stuck in now. Next order of business. Last week we had some music. Let's see what this is like. Get some music for you. Now it's a party. Why does he have a cigarette in his mouth? Well, because, let me see here. The concept, I actually did this from a concept by Derek Loffman. So I'll pull that in here for you. Do you see it there? And he has a cigarette in his mouth. And in a lot of the Hellboys, depending on the version, he's always smoking cigars and stuff, so it kind of makes sense. But initially I was only going to do a bust of this, and then I thought, well, sure, I'll keep going, and made the body as well. And because he had a smoke in his mouth, I thought, well, it might be fun if he was out on a smoke break. I mean, I didn't really think too much about it. I just kind of went with it, just for the fun of it. So yeah. So let's see. I need to make something for the belt. He generally has these big pocket things in some, depending on the kind of designs you're looking at. He often has like these big pocket things. But with the jacket there, that doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. I could just do I might maybe make that belt bigger. So we're essentially, for this guy, we're kind of designing on the fly. So now you can take in, do some bits, take some bits back, chop and change as we go. Let's hide this jacket for a second so you can see what we're doing. There you go. Just for the sake of, I mean, it doesn't matter too much because obviously we can't see these parts. If it was a production model, if I was doing this for studio work, then it matters. I would make sure that it's all nice and sitting properly, there's no cut throughs, all that good stuff. But for this, doing a still render, we don't have to worry too much about that. I would say it's good practice if you're not working in a studio and you want to, you know, just it's good practice to do those things and make sure you can figure those little things out and have them nice, and that way when you do get a job in the studio, and you will as long as you keep working at it, then you know you'll know you can do that. But you do need to you do need to make sure everything needs to be nice and clean and proper. You can't be cheating when you're doing studio work. So I'll just smooth out this area because I don't want, what I try to avoid, something you should try to avoid is do you hear that? There's like lyrics in this. The struggle of artists. Oh yeah, he will. Sorry, Derek is asking there. Not sure if you already mentioned, but will he have a tail? Yes, he will have a tail. I actually forgot completely about the tail, so good show. Only for you, Derek. He just saved the stream. Is make sure that when you have creases, make sure that your creases aren't just outlining things, you know, that so like a fold in the skin or whatever isn't just outlining an entire area, because skin doesn't work that way. And it can be, it's not very, like your mark isn't going to be, the mark isn't going to be very dynamic if you do, say you get your Damien standard out and then you just go straight across a form with a crease at the exact same rate all the way across. You want it to, you know, fade out or have different depths, or, you know, go back in after and like smooth out a certain area, and not randomly either. You don't just randomly smooth out an area. Think about like what area would be smoother. So actually, this is something like you always have to do after you, when you use this process of making a character where you have all the different pieces and then you dynamesh them together and then you duplicate, Z-remesh, reproject, like I showed in the last one, in the last stream, not the last stream, the one before, because we did the challenge, the sculpting challenge in the last stream, but the last Hellboy one, I showed that, like how I do that with the Z-remesh and reproject. The seams where the different pieces meet, you'll get a little line, so you just need to go back in with your smooth brush and just smooth out where you want them. And the nice thing is you don't always want to smooth them out, because sometimes those creases are good, you want them. Yeah, see, like it's giving me that crease here when I dynamesh them together, and then I can just fade that crease out as it goes around to the outer side of the arm. Same in here, like I want a crease in here. So it's just going in and finding. I feel like I shouldn't have done that. Oh, no, it's okay. Sometimes if you hide something and then smooth along the edge, it'll separate the geometry. But actually, now that I think about it, it's more when if you have the Sculptures Pro activated, it can do that sometimes. So you just have to be careful of it, because essentially it thinks that's what you're telling it to do. Right. Oh yeah, and I pulled the shoulders down a little bit just to give them that kind of, you know, like with the shoulders down, it kind of flows into these big traps better. Makes them feel a little bit more round and bulky. Would the crease brush be used for that? Usually for, okay, so for, like say I wanted to work into this, just smoothing it back, and then say, you know, like at the biggest part where the two muscles meet, maybe that's where the biggest fold is. So we just grab the Damien standard, or BDS, to quickly select it, and just with a low intensity, or relatively low, like I have it there, let's say 12 is fine, and just go over it a couple of times. It's much better, like you can see, okay, just to show you the difference, go over it a couple of times. I'm just all smoothing it again just to make sure that I don't get anything too harsh. I can go back down. I'm up at subdivision 2 now, so just lower it a little bit just so the smooth brush is a bit more effective. Even lower it back down to 1. This guy, the lowest subdivision on this guy is actually pretty high, just because there's a lot of little forms on his shape, or sorry, there's a lot of little forms on his head, and with the mouth and stuff like that, I had to kind of have that initial Z remesh kind of high, just to keep the general forms, so that when I projected I didn't lose too much. Right, or if I go over here and then up this, you see how it just digs in way too much. It's like that's a Damien standard mark. Like after a big part of it is you don't want your final piece, like for example clay polish is awful for that, where clay polish is a great tool and you should use it, but once you use it you need to go in and just touch it a little bit with the smooth, or inflate a little bit just to kill that. Because what I don't want is, I don't want the final result to look like, oh, you can see where he clay polished, you can see that he got that look from clay polishing it. You know, you should be in control, you should have full control in the end, not relying just purely on the tool. So I don't want this like Damien standard line. You can see even there, it just outlines the thing, where if I bring the intensity down, I can kind of watch it as it goes in. You see how that's just nicer, it's neater. It's not like a hole like drilled through the surface. It's a pinch. It's more of a pinch. I'm not using the pinch there because I'll show you. I can use the pinch, but there's no real need. That's just gonna pull things together, so there's not really a need. And what the pinch can do, maybe if we do it here, you'll be able to see it. You see, like if I go along here with the pinch, wherever that the radius ends, it pinches and it'll like flatten either side of it. So that's another one actually. You can see that crease from where the chest subtool that was there and got dynameshed in. You can see where the line meets. Just really light smooth across it. If I was using the pinch, it's the same thing, relatively low intensity, and just brush over it, give it a little bit more intensity. So I'm just slowly creating that edge, and I can control it rather than having the intensity up really high and doing this and trying to smooth it back, and it's also affecting other surfaces and so on. It's a lot easier to manage if you just keep it kind of low. And you can adjust your brush size or whatever as you go, so on. So always be wary of that. So here you see I'm just kind of brushing out with that Damien standard. And I'm brushing out and pulling away. Do you know what I mean? So it's you have to make sure you want to use it kind of. Something people can fall into is because you're using a computer and you're not using a brush with bristles and a canvas, you get into this mechanical way of actually making strokes, which you kind of want to avoid. You want to, you know, keep, like if you ever do, I know anyone who's listened to or come along for these streams on a regular basis, I'll probably blue in the face listening to me talk about life drawing classes, but that's something you learn in life drawing classes, is to draw from your shoulder and not your, like a lot of, like everyone does it. I did it when I was a kid. When you draw from your wrist. You put your wrist down on the paper and you draw like that. But you don't want to do that. You want to keep your wrist off the paper and draw. And sure, if you need to get in to little, fine, but overall you should be using your shoulders, especially at the beginning. And the longer you do it, the more accurate you get from using your shoulder, which is what you want. It's a much better way to do it. So and then always having your finger ready to just smooth it back, very helpful, because you want that natural look. This is a bit funny looking here now. Thanks, Zeus. Do I need to learn drawing to become good at sculpting? Okay, so Non-me official is asking, do they need to be good at drawing to be good at sculpting? And the short answer is no. I know really good sculptors that have never been into drawing. They're not really, they never really did much of it. They wouldn't be what you'd call like great draftsmen. I suppose for me personally, I came from drawing first for a long time, and that helped me a lot when I got into sculpting. Like it came to me a lot quicker, and it can be good for you just have a nice understanding from drawing of like the flow of lines and forms, that's which is very helpful. You also, if you go from like modeling in Maya or whatever to sculpting in ZBrush, you're kind of coming from a more technical point of view into sculpting, which can, when it comes to sculpting, obviously it's a more, as opposed to box modeling, it's much more like kind of artistic. It's much more gestural as opposed to technical, by nature of literally how you do it. So when you're sculpting, you want to be in that kind of mindset. Do you know what, actually, let me pull that arm down, so I'll flatten this and then use my Damien standard and use it nice and large. Just go back in like that. Again, I'm using it big because I want a big valley. I'm not looking for like a line I want to kind of push in the whole surface into an angle. So that's why I'm using a large Damien standard. It's super handy. I do that all the time. You don't, Damien standard is not just for drawing lines on your sculpt, you know what I mean? Actually kind of nice one. Can I get a nice lip? Mask that hand. Is Dam standard good for wrinkles and skin details? Yeah, absolutely. It's not kind of. It is. Not to say it isn't. It absolutely is, and probably the one I use most for that kind of stuff. Wrinkles on clothes, I use the standard brush a lot, because I don't necessarily want all wrinkles on clothes to be like sharp. So the best, the kind of, just to say, the mindset should really be more, you know what shape you want, and then understanding the different brushes and knowing what they do, which doesn't take long, honestly. Like, there's not, I know that there is a lot of brushes, I guess, especially if you're starting new. Like, this is going to be really intimidating if you're just here and you don't know what any of these do. Like, a lot of them I don't use really ever. They're for very specific cases, as most of you will know. Well, I shouldn't make that assumption, I guess. But if you know, as you go, you start to learn more and more, and you just know, all right, well, I can use a pinch brush here to get that shape that I want. Or maybe there's a different brush altogether. So it's not like the Damien standard is their wrinkle brush, because like you said, or like I said there, like just to push in the whole stomach, I can use a large Damien standard brush. Just mask off that, and with that large Damien standard brush on the lowest, I can just push in the entire stomach with the Damien standard brush. You see? So I often use it for like making big shapes. I don't just use it for wrinkles. So just not to say that that's what you think or anything. Just just understand what a brush does, and then you can utilize it a little bit better. Javier Gonzalez. Hi Paul, first time I catch you live. Love your work. Thanks, Javier. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the kind words, gentlemen. Yeah, okay. A little bit of a ridge under the rib cage. Separate a little bit. I've added like little bumps there where the ribs are, but I don't know if I really like that. Now that I've done it. We'll leave them there for a bit, maybe it'll sink in. I need to hide this hand, it's just bothering me. It's in my way. Help these abs a little bit. There you go, there's the lines from when we projected the Dynamesh to pieces. You'll see as you go up the subdivisions, see you can go up to the top subdivision and try to smooth them from there, but generally it's too dense and it takes forever to actually smooth them. But if you go to the lower subdivisions and move up, smooth it, and then move up and smooth it, then it actually is a lot easier. So get through that real fast. As far as see, it's lighter. Then you can just essentially just rub it out real quick. I can barely see it now. It's there though. And just because I'll know it's there. We'll know it's there. I'll get rid of it. Someone asked there, seeing something about hands. The clean shapes you always. Okay, hold on. Let me catch up a little bit here. Hey, Ale from Chile, welcome. Love the clean shapes you always get in your sculpts. Hope you're good, says Frogan. Oh, hey Frogan. Cheers, brother. The pouches, yeah, I need to add in the pouches. I could do that now actually and see. Although it's going to be a bit tight with that jacket, so I don't know is it going to be the best for this. You know what we will do? I'll show you. Actually, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, what we'll do is, so if I mask this, and I have dynamics up here, but I also have it just pulled up over here. So let's go collision volume, and I'm just masking because I just want. I'm gonna use the dynamics to let this coat drop a little bit, and put the inflate down low. The inflate essentially is the distance that it's hitting things. So if you have the inflate really high and you have a surface here and it'll like stop, say at this distance, and the lower you put that inflate, the closer it will fall to the object that it's colliding with. So let's do that. We've got self collision to 1, firmness to 3 might be fine, and then simulation iterations, we'll just put that up. I generally put that up between 250 and 300 is fine. I mean, you can play around with these though and find what works best for you. So just let that fall. So you can see it just gives us some nice free wrinkles that kind of make sense. And we can obviously, we'll need to pull it back out because you can see the reason it's kind of cutting through these is because like everything there is kind of low poly. So it's only got a certain amount of it's only got a certain amount of points to calculate. So if it had more, then it would collide less. But if you have too many polys, you kind of want it in the mid-range. You don't want to use high polys, too many polys, because 1, it takes really long to simulate, and 2, the wrinkles don't really look like wrinkles. It's essentially the more rigid your cloth or whatever it is you're using dynamics to simulate, the more rigid it is, the less polys, as a rule of thumb, the less polys you want, because you don't want the whole thing to be, if it's super high poly and you run the dynamics on it, it will crumble up into so many little, it has so many points that will move all over the place, and you'll get something like really like hyper wrinkly, which for a coat like this, it wouldn't be that way. So there's no point in having this at a higher poly count. That, and I mean, I don't think you want to sit here any more than I do waiting for the thing to simulate. So I'll move the shorts in a little bit there rather than just pulling the jacket out too much. Pull that over the calf. Push that in a little bit. Let's get that a little bit straighter. And Derek, yeah, we have to get onto that tail. Let's make that tail actually. Hey, Camille's asking, is there a way to decrease the length of the curve when it's active? Maybe. I've never actually had to do that, to be honest. But let's... Can I add a point? No. I'm not too sure on that one, actually, to be honest, Camille. I've never had to do that, usually, because I generally, if I'm using a curve in ZBrush, generally in the ballpark will do, generate what you need and then move it from there. I've never had it be too long. Do I need to... Okay, where are we? Yeah. Do I need to learn drawing? Yeah. Look. Which is your workflow for sculpting hands? Yeah, that was one. For hands, the same way I do the body, I'll have essentially cylinders for each part of the finger. Work one finger, get that dynamesh together and working in the general shape. Then duplicate that and pose them. Create like essentially a box for the hand, another box for like this section. Sorry. For like this section of the finger, of the thumb. And then another tube, and dynamesh them together, get them into position, dynamesh them together, and then just sculpt in. Best thing to do, like if you're not familiar too much, if you find, I know a lot of people find hands quite difficult. They are difficult. They call them the face of the body because they're expressive. Reference is the best way to go. Just use reference and keep practicing hands until you get them, you start to get them. There's no real secret there, but that's how I'd break it down in order to sculpt it. How do you practice manual retopo? I've been struggling a lot with that. At this point, like I learned a lot about manual retopo from working in the industry, from working with other people that were there before me and kind of passed on their knowledge to me. And then there's obviously YouTube videos, streams like this with people doing that kind of thing. is good. I mean, manual retopo is a whole thing in of itself. It depends on what you're doing it for, because if you're doing it for props or a set, it's a whole different thing than if you're doing it for a character. Because characters, the topo on characters, although like for a human character to a human character that's on a similar style, the topo doesn't have to be all that different, and you can find lots of examples of good topo for that. But as soon as you have to start making something specific, you really need to know what you're doing and know how it's going to deform, so you can put the loops in the appropriate place. For me, I'm a big advocate of the simpler the topo, the better. I don't like to, you know, if there's loads of muscle detail and stuff, I'll get a lot of that with normals. I'll use normals to get a lot of that, and just try to keep the topology as simple as possible, because that makes it easier for the riggers. As simple and as straight as possible. But yeah, just a lot of it, to be honest, I got from just working with people. A good friend of mine, Jorge Alonso, I worked with for a good couple of years. He's probably the best I've known at the technical elements of like character modeling. So I learned a lot from him, from working with him over the years. And then the rest from like the likes of YouTube channels and streams with modelers, and just, you know, trying to practicing it, and we'll having a stream on in our YouTube video. Same way I learned a lot of things. Will you get better at drawing? So Undead Castle is asking, would you get better at drawing from sculpting and vice versa? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I feel like I've gotten better at drawing as I've sculpted more. And yeah, and vice versa for sure. Because I mean, in both things you're just working out forms. One is in 2D, but like the same principles are applying. You're looking for nice forms, nice shapes, nice flow to your edges and lines. So yeah, I would say so, absolutely. Do I need to retop it? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine, let's not think about it too much. No name official. One more question. Should I start building forms base mesh by box modeling, or should I start from a sphere and extract and move from there if I want to create a character? So I can't, there's no right way. I know people who always start from a base mesh and then go in and start sculpting into that base mesh, and I personally start from a sphere, sculpt it, and then retopo on top. I have used the base mesh. The only time I really do that though is in production, because it's just a bit quicker, because you know, you need to be clean, you need to be, when I'm doing my own work I never really do that, because I find I don't like to use a base mesh too much, because I find it influences, I prefer to have a blank canvas to start on, rather than something that already has forms and anatomy there, because it influences my decisions. I want to go in fresh. So that's why I don't do it on my personal work, and often I don't do it in production work for when I'm working for the studio. But sometimes I will. It depends on the design. It depends on the time I have. depends on a whole lot of things. What kind of mood I'm in, I guess. Alright, let's try this. Insert cube. Something like that should be. I like this, got like an Indian kind of vibe to it. Or to my Irish untrained ear, it does anyway. Hey Yulia, nice to have you back. No problem, Harold. Savankar. Adak. Let's go with that. Okay, sorry if I butchered your name, but I do try. Hi. Where are we here? Do general tips for okay. Do you have any general tips while working with highly stylized characters, thinking specifically making the 2D concept really work in 3D? That's a loaded question. So I'll try to do my best answer. I would say, for me, I think working in pieces is the key to it for me. I always find that works because I can control the shapes a lot easier. I don't have to fight it as much. But in terms of a big part of, if you want to interpret the 2D design into 3D and do that well, is one, having a really good eye, which just comes with time and practice. You can't really be taught. You can be helped along to develop your eye. If someone's like pointing out, giving you critique, that's really important. Of like, look, see how you did this, when in actual fact, if you pay attention to it here, you can see it's like that. You'll start to clock that you're putting down what you think you see rather than what is actually there. So building your observational skills is really helpful. And there's also like an awareness of 3D space, because often I've gotten 2D concepts for work and stuff, or worked off like just someone's concept for personal work, where it's very flat, it's very graphic 2D. So to design that in 3D, you really have to think about, you really have to try to imagine it in 3D space and what that turns like. And that can be difficult for a lot of people, some more than others. Like any skill, like some people are kind of just innately good at it, and some people find it a little bit harder. Anyone can do it. It just takes, it'll take some time to get used to doing that, I would say. Alright, so we're going to use this this is the base for our pocket. This will be deleted, but this will be the base for our pocket. But we're going to extract planes off of this. Oh, too thick. So we'll just extract, accept. And we just want the outside. I don't want thickness right now. And the reason for that is I can Z-remesh it into a little shallow box. And that's the bottom of our thing sorted. Now what way do I want the shape? Maybe something like this. Oh, wrong one. Yeah, it'll work. So we have to do there. So you see the way it's got these edges on it, these little bumpy bits. So what we'll do is we'll just use our slice curve and just cut them off. Totally hidden. Done. That's nice and clean. And Z-remesh that. Beans. Alright. We can inflate that a little bit just to get it over this outer part. And then lastly I'm gonna add like a strappy piece. So get rid of that. This bit will be a bit more awkward. But we don't need to get too specific as long as it's close. Extract, accept. It's not ideal, but we'll work with it. Actually, I wonder what I can do. Oh, sorry, we're not working with plain double, so I can see it. A bit of saving. Okay, Alcatab. I'm diving into Unreal Engine 5 and I'm wondering if you know how these crazy detailed ZBrush assets are textured with millions of polys. The only way I think of it working is using Substance Designer or a like software to procedural texture rather than Paint. But then how are these statues, characters textured? So the details are in maps called normal maps, and a normal map will essentially fake detail. So actually I'll show you here. Don't I have it on? Yeah, I do. This is another character that I'm working on at the moment. So if you go in here, you can see there's like skin detail that I've started, and the lip detail and all that kind of thing. Now I can have something like that kind. Now this is just Z-remesh. This is not production topology or anything, but I can have something low poly like this, and then I bake this high poly as a map that gives like height information essentially, and will give this detail. You apply that map then, so this is what goes into your game, like this low level topology, this low poly version, and then that high detail gets applied to it as a normal map on top. So let's go watch YouTube video or whatever on normal maps to get like a full, and that way you can get a full idea and you can see a normal map and stuff. But that's how you get that like fine detail onto a lower poly mesh that you would use in games. Okay, so I've got that. I'll go into deformation and just polish by groups. You see the way that polishes the edge? Polish by groups. Local symmetry's on, so I'm just going to see what happens if I just... Yeah, that's better. So I just mirror and welded it, and now I'll just, there you go. So for this type of, like, that's done now. I don't need to go back in later and retopo this or anything. Like, that's now a low poly. That'll do. If I wanted to, I could go in, and I have done this in the past, where I just use ZRemesh to get me this far. Like, this is perfect. And then I can, you know, if I wanted to, I can go in and like just use the ZModeler brush. Go in and delete a couple of loops if I want to like lower the poly count a little bit more or whatever. So that's super handy. That's a big time saver for doing stuff like this. This is a big reason. Well, before I started working in the industry, I probably would have, like, that was really where I started using really low topology to get what I wanted, and found that much more helpful. And the reason is from learning to do that, because out of necessity, out of like, I don't want to have to retopo every single button and strap and everything that I do every single time, because it's just time consuming. And obviously, you know, you're working in a studio, you don't want to be the slow person. I wouldn't necessarily say like speed was always on my mind, but just, you know, I want to lessen my workload if I can. So doing it this way meant that as soon as it was, when I make it the first time, that's it, it's done. It goes off and it's already low poly and it's ready to go, rather than, you know, having some Dynameshed strap that I sculpted on top of it or whatever, and it all needs to be retopoed. And now the nice thing as well is I get a nice uniform thickness on everything. And I can control how, when I smooth it, and this is just hit D instead of Control D. So Control D will subdivide it. I don't want to do that. There's no need to do that. This is a low poly thing. If I want to sculpt on top of it, sure, and I may do, but for now I don't need to. For now I just want to see how this is looking overall, broad strokes. So what I can do is, you can see here, if I delete this edge and this edge, right, we can even up that, so you can see what that looks like, right? So I'll take that off. This is it. For anyone who doesn't know much about box modeling or anything, this is what's called a support loop, and it's basically stopping this from moving too far by surrounding it with other loops, with other edges. Now you see, so that's stopping that edge, so it's not as smooth. It get an edge on the side of it. Just to quickly explain that for anyone who's not aware of that stuff, because it's very handy to know even when you're just sculpting, especially if you're trying to do stylized, because that's another tip actually for doing stylized. Having things low poly like that allows for like really nice clean shapes. If this has loads of polys and I have to go in and sculpt it, then there's no way I can make a strap like this with a Dynameshed, you know, thing. It's going in with like, you know, H polish and stuff. You're just gonna get lumps and stuff, where this way is clean. And even if I want to just add some chunkiness to it, I can just inflate a little bit. So now we've all the elements of our pocket. We don't need this box that we use to extract stuff off anymore. Does that make sense? Everyone happy enough with that? Let me know if there's any questions. Oh look, that's funny, I don't like that. ZRemesh it again. Fixed it. I love ZRemesh. So I'm adding in my spark loop now. Just get it out of the way. I know I just used the, so I'm using, so BZ, you can see it here, the ZModeler. BZM is the ZModeler. So that's what I'm using here, and I'm just going into over a face and then extrude all polygons, and that's exactly what it's going to do for me. So I'm extruding the polygons. I might actually pull that down before. I can pull that in now. I might make these a bit thicker actually. Now, I pulled that inwards, which means I know if I turn off double, the normals are the wrong way around. So I need to flip them. No, where is that again? I have it here in my UI. It's ages since I've... Is it in like... Flip, there it is. Display properties, flip. Flip and double. So double can be handy if you're using planes, just so you can see it, because otherwise, without double on, it's the opposite side of the thing is invisible. Let's just pull that down to like there, and do the same thing with this guy. I'm gonna just inflate these. Big chunky pockets. So you see this has no support loops. Now, for anyone who's not aware also, if you're this is what's referred to as sub-D modeling. In other words, the kind of modeling you do for animation. So it gets smoothed at the render, when you go through render. Before it ends up on the screen, essentially, it gets smoothed from what you have. So you do your low poly version and it's smooth. And you need support loops to hold edges. In games, you don't do that because you don't smooth it. So you don't need to worry about it as much. You just bevel edges if you need to. So instead of doing this, you could go in here, go to, with your ZModeler, hold over the edge, go over to bevel, like so, and just bevel the edge like that, you see? And then just leave it like that. You know, that would just get a texture put on top. It's got the edges smoothed, which will stop this. You won't be able to see these lines, the actual edges, but and then your texture on top, and that'll be that. Where in animation, you go in and you add your support loops like so, and then you smooth it. Generally speaking, you smooth it by 2 squared essentially. So it goes from, it's the same as subdividing twice. See how that looks? And then that's the same. And you can up the subdivision levels in ZBrush 2 if it's not quite smooth enough. Sometimes you might need to actually subdivide once if it's too low poly. So you'd subdivide once, delete the lower, and now this is what you use dynamic. Depends on what you need. Hope I'm explaining that okay. It's one of those things, like even for me starting out in the industry, it took a long time to learn all that stuff because there's so much there. but you know, you're always getting better at it, so you never feel like you're just always bad. You always feel like you're getting better and better and better and better, and then one day you look back and you're like, wow, I remember I didn't know how to do that, or I was doing that this way instead of this way, which is a nice feeling. That's a good thing. That's what you want. Now, next thing we can do, because we have this low poly thing here. Did the light turn off there? Because we have this low poly thing here, we can go in like so. You can actually, essentially, now we're kind of box modeling at this point. So I'm going to add a loop here. Hold on. I'm going to add a loop here. And I'm going to add a loop in the middle, and then using the still using the ZModeler, mask the edge loop, the whole edge loop, flip the mask so only that edge loop now will move, and it minus on the inflate and pull it in, and then we get, you see, right, and now it's a perfectly clean line. Rather than going in with the Damien standard and using like the smooth, the lazy mouse and trying to like draw in a line perfectly, I much prefer to do it this way. It's always cleaner than trying to freehand it. So since we've done that, we've inflated it, we've pushed that aside. So I'm just going to do this. Add one in here. So I hope that makes sense. For anyone who's familiar with, you know, box modeling or anything like that, that would be, don't know that stuff inside out. But I know for anyone who's not familiar with box modeling, that can sometimes kind of look like magic. It's hard to wrap your head around initially, but once you understand it, you'll see it's very simple. What graphics tablet am I using? I'm using a Wacom Cintiq 22-inch HD. I have one of the older ones. I was gonna buy a new one recently, and I'm hemming and hawing about it. I didn't upgrade it for a long time because I don't like the buttons on the side. The HD is just a screen, and I just use my keyboard, and that's very short. I've had them with the buttons on the side, I just don't use them. I brush off them sometimes, and then the UI comes up and it just annoys me, so I just like the screen. Where the new Pro is like that, it has something up here I think, but so but this one, I think at one point this, I'm pretty sure now you could buy one of these for like, I mean, I think it's like 700 or 800 euro, that is. I don't know what that is in dollars or pounds or whatever your own currency is, but it's definitely it's nice to use. I wouldn't necessarily recommend, well personally I wouldn't recommend a smaller one than 22-inch generally. Because the UI and stuff is in the way. That maybe for me, like I'll often sculpt like this because I just like a lot of canvas. I don't like a really dense UI. I want to be in here, not in the UI. So I use a fair amount of keyboard shortcuts instead of like Z-Remeshing. All that I have is keyboard shortcuts. This is too strong, so I just want to I might actually just use the bevel I was doing before, because I do actually want this to be a more rounded surface. And then we can just add in, smart edge there. So I do want the rounded thing there, and then again we can do the same thing as before. Let me say here, add one here, add a loop here, mask this bad boy, flip it. I might actually duplicate this and then delete poly loop. That could be cleaner. Rather than doing the same thing again and again, we're adding in that little ridge. Sorry, where am I? Extrude. Let's go in that way, turn off double. And of course, after you do all this, you can go in, add more detail, add stitching, all that type of stuff. We're just looking to get a nice clean base. For example, here we could throw in, where's that? I mean, duplicate that, did I? Yeah. So split it. For the sake of let's turn that off. Yeah. Just to throw something in for now. Split that off. For this, I'll probably like put it here, like a decent size. So I'd actually probably put, well, we'll see. Maybe you could like put a little symbol on this button or whatever, you know, whatever you feel like yourself. Let's work into this a little bit. Extrude poly loop. We've got insert, so we can insert our edge loops, our support loops. See? So on. So let's just forking. There's a big one. Is ZBrush hard to learn? I wouldn't say so. I mean, ZBrush was the first 3D software I ever learned. To be honest, I wouldn't be a 3D artist if ZBrush didn't exist. Because I was always a 2D artist. For many years, and I was never interested. The idea of like box modeling and so on never really appealed to me back then. And then and ZBrush was out then, and a good friend of mine, Aidan Coughlin, was like, "Oh, you need to use ZBrush. It's be great." I went to college with him and stuff. You should try ZBrush. And I was like, "Yeah, maybe, yeah. Oh, you can sculpt. It's like you can just sculpt in it." I was like, "Yeah, but can you?" Like, I never even gave it a chance. And then eventually, he pushed me to the point that I had a look at it, and then he got me to he had it on his computer, and he said, "Oh, come over one of the days," and we sat down, and he was like, "Give it a shot, just have a play with it," and really enjoyed it, and the rest is history. So I like, if you know Maya or anything like that, you already know, say, what extrude means or what a polyloop is, or I didn't know any of that. And I still found it relatively easy to learn. Now, that said, I was spending a lot of hours per day in it, so it didn't take me too long. But at first it can be like anything new. At first it can be, you can feel a bit bit out of your depth, a bit intimidated, because just by nature 3D, there's a lot to learn. So no matter what you're learning, there is always that, but you quickly come around it. And for my money, if ZBrush for me is the most fun that I have in what I do. Is it possible to try ZBrush in a hobby sense without spending money? Yeah, so there's ZBrush Core Mini, and that's free, so you can play around with that if you wanted to try it. I'd highly recommend it. It's free. I mean, you've nothing to lose, and it's a lot of fun. Obviously, there's the full package, which is what you're looking at here. Is obviously going to cost you money, and there's features in this that isn't in the free version, because of course. But ZBrush Core Mini is great, and it's actually a great way to just introduce you to the kind of a bit of the UI and the brushes and how it kind of works. If you got the hang of ZBrush Core Mini, and then later on went up to ZBrush Core and the full package, by the time you got here, you'd pick this up very quickly, So it's actually a good way to progressively, kind of like, if you're playing a game, they give you a power at the beginning. They don't give you all the powers. It's similar kind of way of thinking about it. You don't do everything at once because it's too overwhelming. So it's actually a good way to progress. Let's just throw some kind of colour on this, I suppose. Redder. Oh, that's right. See, I just had material selected rather than RGB for colour. You know what, I'm just actually, just for the sake of ease, I'm going to collapse all these into one, because then I'll also be able to move this around because it might be nice to have. Two of them, but I really don't want it like that line, that straight line in the jacket's kind of nice. I don't. It's gonna look a bit wonky just having this. You know what I mean? That's the problem that I'm having with that. So this is kind of like, modeling is one thing, sculpting, but when you have to design is where there's a lot of problem solving in modeling and sculpting, but I always find design is the hardest. It's a lot more problem solving, and like that is a problem. So maybe that's just not going to work, but I don't want this just sitting there like that, just not, you know, just not. Just don't even. So, and sometimes, you know, you make something like this, like a nice little pouch or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I love that. And then afterwards, it's just causing you problems, and eventually there's a phrase, kill your darlings, which is like, you know, maybe I love this pouch, but at a certain point it's causing more problems than it's solving. So eventually I just have to let it go. So actually I think that was quite, making that pouch was actually quite, I've stretched that too much. Making that pouch was actually kind of made my point quite well about like keeping things low poly, and that's how you keep them clean. You know, like that as a base shape now, and if I want to add detail to that, then I just add detail on top. I don't need to go in and use clay build-up or anything like that. That's going to start making things a bit messier. Don't let your good taste ruin the narrative. That is very, very, yeah, I like that. I haven't heard that one. That's great. Very, very true. Yeah, the narrative is king. Don't do something just for the sake of being cool, essentially. You know, don't. If the character shouldn't have a sword, but you like swords, the correct answer there is don't give your character the sword. Essentially, in practice, is what that means. Because it's not gonna do you any favors. The story is what connects people to the character. I just want to see how this looks. It's always good to give yourself a fresh eye to just change material, turn on and off colours. I like to use colour as I go, just so to get a fuller idea of the direction you're going in and so on. It's always very helpful. It informs me for texturing later too. Like I'll just block in colours. I might even paint in ZBrush as a base texture to work later. I often do that, and it's very helpful because ZBrush is great for painting and just getting lovely gradients and stuff that isn't necessarily super easy to do on other software. So it's good to look at it in grayscale and just see the model and just make sure the shapes are working, and that's why I just render it just to see, like, yeah, okay, I'm happy enough with how that's gone so far. And I like to use if you go to materials, there's this base material too. So I've taken that base material too and essentially just upped the diffuse so it's a bit brighter so I don't get really harsh shadows, and then lowered the opacity so I don't get that super shiny specular on it as well, and that's what you're looking at here. And I like that because it's just it's kind of true to the model, you know. It's not throwing a bunch of funky pretend shadows and lights into that's embedded in the shader itself. which is nice. That can be fine too, depending. Like sometimes like the ZBrush clay has that, but it's still quite nice to work with when sculpting. But for me, I prefer the look of this. And then I go back to ZBrush paint, turn them on. And ZBrush paint is essentially, it's just white, it's very simple, so it's a better, you know, if I have the colors on top of, you know, one of the other shaders, then you can see the difference on that. Like if I turn, that's the more truer version of the color. So, you know, later if I'm using that elsewhere, in another software or anything, it will be closer to this color. Okay, so let's actually just do this. I need some more loops on that, I think. So there you go. So I just subdivided that with the support loops in, so I get a better sense of the shape. I can even extrude all polygons. Give yourself a nice thick belt. I'm gonna have to pull this in certain areas, which is fine. So yeah, I didn't see that earlier. Just move that back out. So that was from when we did the dynamic cloths in. If my boss see me here, I'm a dead man. Good man, George. Stick it to the man. Feels bad. I'm always working when live's happening. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I sometimes watch them. You know, it's as long as you're, well, for me, I can't speak on behalf of your boss, of course. Or I don't know what job you actually do, so I can't really say. If you're using heavy machinery, it's probably not a good idea to be watching the stream at the same time. But I often will watch streams and stuff, like not watch them, but they'll be on one monitor, and I like to do that. And it's just kind of, and listen to them. If they say something interesting, I'll pop my head up and, oh yeah, that's cool, and then get back and just kind of work while I'm listening to it. Stupid life getting in the way of streams. Jan Cigarza, greetings from Cuba. Welcome, all the way from Cuba. That's awesome. Okay. Oh, so okay. Yeah, you came back to me about the normals. I understand normals, baking. Okay, cool. I was wondering if you know how they're doing it in Unreal Engine 5, because there is not any normal mapping used. I have the model open and it's just high poly model for the character and an 8K color metal rough map. I wish I could help you more there, but unfortunately, because I work in animation, I'm not super experienced with Unreal Engine. I'm not as experienced with real time, so I'm not too sure about that. Alcatab, sorry about that, buddy. Hey, fucking gamer 18. I find myself adding holding edges and support loops for all my models and characters, even if they're just game objects and props, just in case I want to get some cool smooth looking renders or animation with the same models. Is that efficient, or would you suggest a separate unsubdivided version for the game and a separate divided version for nice animations? generally I would say, yeah, like don't add the support loops and stuff, and then you can like save out a separate file and add the support loops where you want them there and use that for, you know, a nice render. Is fine. I mean, I suppose you can get away with it if you're if it's still low poly enough that it's not a problem with the game. But really with games, you kind of want to keep it as efficient as you can. So I wouldn't necessarily have a sub D model in a game when there's no need. You're just adding a bunch of loops for no reason. Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't generally do that, no. Can you give any tips for beginner with sculpting? Can I learn to sculpt better? Yeah. Just, I mean, there's no secret tip. Really, it's like learning anything. Go on YouTube, watch Pixologic streams and stuff like these. You know, try to get as much information. There's tons of it all over the internet. So, these streams are a really good source of it. YouTube tutorials. Pablo Munez has lots of tutorials, and ZBrush Pixologic has a huge amount as well for ZBrush. You know, go on Gumroad, get tutorials. Whatever you can, even if it's just watch YouTube. Like that's all I did years back when I didn't have any money and I just wanted to learn it. Just watched YouTube and you know, figured out the basics of it and kind of went from there. In terms of sculpting itself, yeah, you can learn a lot about, you know, watch tutorials on anatomy, again just on YouTube even. You know, if you can't afford to go out and get tutorials, it's not the end of the world. That's always, there's tons and tons of stuff on YouTube directly, so you don't have to worry too much about that. This one. And start simple. Don't overdo it. Just really, you know, like I would recommend doing, if you want to do characters, you know, do a nice bust. Do a bust that you like the look of. Don't go with something with crazy hair or something, or like a half mech outfit. It's going to be really hard to manage. Like, you have to learn loads to actually get that thing finished. Don't do that to yourself. Just keep it nice and simple. Do a nice bust of some concept you like the look of. You know, go on Pinterest or whatever, find something cool you like the look of, and open up ZBrush and just start. And you'll be surprised how quickly, you know, you do that for a while, you'll be very surprised how quickly it starts to all kind of click into place. Just drop that to touch. I feel like really there should be a belt buckle here. But then this is in the way. I mean, I guess we could just squash it in there. I don't know, what do you think? Just leave it in there? Have the belt buckle like here? I feel like it's still in the way. Hold on, let's see. Duplicate this. And probably need these. Let's inflate slightly and grab that color. What are we listening to? Huh? Alright. This reminds me of a song. I can't think of what it is. It's like 90s hip hop song, I think, or something. My colleagues use that. Oh my god, kill your darlings. Yeah, yeah, kill your darlings. Yeah, it's a very popular saying. There was a. I remember watching a tutorial, and I, for the life of me, I can't remember, and it's years ago, who the tutorial was for, and I heard it there, and I never forgot it. Kill your darlings, and I've heard other people use it since. Solely produced in ZBrush, or did you import it? Was this model solely produced in ZBrush, or did you import it? So yeah, it's completely made in ZBrush. This guy started like that. So I went from that to that. There's a tutorial right there. You know those old, like, draw a circle and then do this. That'll be €70. Was the model solely produced in ZBrush, or did you import? Okay. Hi, can you tell me what bug is appearing when in hard surface modeling there are a bunch of flat surfaces, and after smoothing it, they're strange and look like clay moved with thumb? I kind of have to see it to know exactly what you mean by that. But if you're smoothing it, so like here's a low poly mesh, right? Now if I smooth that, it's fine. If I smooth that, it's fine. But if I hit smooth and I have Sculptures Pro on up here, watch what happens. You see that? You see? Messes it up. Because it's adding the idea of this is it's adding topology, it's editing the topology on the fly. It's essentially decimating it on the fly with whatever resolution, which is based on your brush size. So if I go higher, it's less. If I go lower, it's more. See? So that could be what it is. I'd have to see it to really oh hey Sean, thanks brother. Oh, I like that being darker actually. So yeah, something that I've been saying a lot this year, and something that I've been trying to focus on a lot this year, is just enjoying the process of making things rather than trying to just, you know, especially I think for professionals right now, there's a big emphasis on, like, you know, especially with things like NFTs as well, is kind of perpetuating it a little bit. Not that I don't have a problem with that, just the likes of that and Instagram and trying to up your followers and all this type of stuff. It's very easy to get caught up in working on your brand all the time, which, don't get me wrong, is very important, and I do that, otherwise I probably wouldn't be here. Then again, to be honest, I kind of just enjoy doing this, so it's a win-win, but it should be a win-win, you know what I mean? That's kind of why you do this in the first place. You don't get into sculpting for a living because what else are you going to do? You get into it because you love doing it in the first place. You love making art. You know, it's you know, doing your hobby as a job. So I mean, if you're not loving it, then you may as well just do something else, because if you're not loving it, then you could have been anything at that point. What was the point? So as important as it is, and even though I say that, like, you know, artists focus on their brand and stuff, and even though I do it myself, so I don't, not to be contradictory, but it's important not to forget sometimes to just sit and enjoy the process of making something, and not be thinking about, like, oh, I hope this gets a lot of likes, and I hope, you know, I get more followers when people see this, and all that kind of stuff, because it can be kind of addicting. You know, you do a sculpt, you do a character, you do a whatever, and you know, you see this one's got more likes than the last one, or maybe it's done really well. You've got like, you know, 1,000 likes on ArtStation or something like that or more, and you know, like it's trending, and you're kind of buzzing about that, and you want that again, and it's kind of addictive. And it's important, I think, to not get caught up in that. So this year was something that I really tried to hammer home, was to keep reminding myself to just enjoy the process and not just make art that I want to make, and just enjoy the actual act of making it, getting in and actually sculpting stuff and texture and stuff and lighting it and all those things that I just enjoy doing, and do it because I enjoy doing it and not getting caught up in that. So for any guys out there that are working professionals at the moment and are getting caught up in that, just be careful, because it can really suck the fun out of it and suck the soul out of it. And you know, if it then it opens up the floodgates, that if you do a sculpt and it doesn't, or whatever you do, and it doesn't do as well as you wanted it to do, then it's almost like, oh, you didn't enjoy it. Then you put all the joy of that sculpt into whether it did well online or not, which is a terrible way to look at it. And it just because whether it does good online or not, that is not how to judge if it's good or not. It really isn't. And I feel like I felt that way for a while. I felt like, oh, it's a non-biased audience, so if they like it, it must be good. But it's bigger than that. There's more to it than that. Like your level, your attention, what you learned. Did you enjoy it? Nope. Wrong way. Oh. I'll leave that for a momento. That's going to be the belt buckle. So another thing you can do here, since we have this even thing, it's like we've got this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge. So it's thinner on the sides, it would leave more on the sides. So what we can do is we can go polygroup, single poly, bang, 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 that's like so. And then one of these, inset, polygroup island, which is going to be essentially this part, because this is one polygroup, and we can inset it like so, you see, and that's just going to create a new one inside, and you can see there it's giving us this. So now what we've got is this edge flow is leading us around here in a loop, which means now we can add another loop inside here and do what we did earlier, or similar, but we're going to change it a little bit, because this is not a seam in cloth, in leather or whatever. So this is an example of something you can do. And then we go insert, here's our support loops, and this is going to hold this edge here. Them. There. Oh, oops. There. One there and there. And sure, just because these are a bit big, we'll just toss them in the middle here, so that's a bit more even. So, yeah. So. And it's nice and clean, you know, nice straight lines, no messing. So I have done, but I don't generally, if it can be helped, I won't go in and try freehand straight lines like that. Thanks, Polygon Parrot. No, gent. So you can see alright, I'll tell you what time is it. Alright, we're nearly out of time, unfortunately. I will say, actually, that's probably, to be honest, in my opinion, probably the most useful information I've given in a stream in a while. So if you're watching this one, it's a good one to watch, because using that, what I just did there with the belt and this pouch is essentially boiling down how my mindset when approaching sculpt is, you know, that this is any extra pieces. Like, let's actually, for an example, we can look at Mr. Freeze again. This one, I've actually done a test render with this. There's a lot of emission, a lot of lighting going on in the suit here that you can't see obviously in ZBrush right now, but this has a lot of kind of hard surface pieces. So obviously the cloth here, you can see I've sculpted into the cloth and added wrinkles. The wrinkles are done mainly with first I'll go in with the standard brush, just BST brush standard, and go in and sculpt into them, and then sometimes I'll use like a mask. So I'll use the mask lasso, come across, oh sorry, turn off, and just like, let me just get rid of this stuff down here, and then I can just like pull out and have an overlapping situation, you see. So I'll do that sometimes. That's another thing I'll do quite a lot. You can see some of that like here. And then the Damien standard here and there, like you can see I just popped in a Damien standard there, and I'm selective with the Damien standard. I want to see where, okay, this crease would be falling down. It makes a little bit more sense that I can add a crease here. I wouldn't just add random creases, like random hard edges into wrinkles. So I haven't done that. You can see there, I haven't done the legs. You can see there on his glutes, so it'll be tighter here where it's against the glute, and then in between it's getting stretched, so you get these stretching across and in here. But it's, so you can even go across with your standard brush like so, and then go back in and smooth, lower it. You see, it's smooth where it's tightest, and that way you can. So that's a handy little tip. Yeah, you can see all of this. This is already low poly. Everything here is already. Just make sure it's not creased. No. You see? Same all these piping and this stuff. It's all sub D modeling. See? But then the organic stuff, this is subdivided. See, that's got 4 subdivisions. The head, I showed you earlier. I mean, of course, that has to have subdivisions regardless, because it needs to have this skin detail on top. That's actually, I'm using Pablo Munez's brushes there. he has a bunch of skin brushes, a skin brush pack that's really nice. And it's just really handy because, you know, there's some stuff there that you'd have to go in and make yourself with alphas or whatever, and so just kind of it's a nice time saver. There's some nice brushes there. I generally use the lip detailer is quite nice on the lips, and there's another one. This can be nice in areas just to get an extra bit of noise. Which one is it? As I forget now. One of these is really nice for I think it's actually lower down here. Anyway. Yeah, these are nice brushes. It's not there. It's one of these, I think. That's another nice one. So they're good, and you want to layer them, keep them quite subtle and layer them. And you know, yeah, so you can see there I've gone in and done a skin detail and stuff in there, and it's just like I can go in and add deeper wrinkles now on top of that. That's like a kind of nicer base. I still need to finish this model is far from done, but see, everything is already low poly. These are just straps, like ZBrush straps. And that's what keeps it clean, rather than, like, you know, trying to make this with, I don't know, like a Damien standard and H polish and all sorts. It's just never going to be clean. So yeah, let's see, how's he looking? Right. So you can see the model itself without the colours in the way. Hopefully this renders alright. And then, you know, you're thinking later in time, like, it's nice to have the colours in there because, like, I'm thinking, like, his suit, you know, it's an energy based suit for freezing things. So if I turn these on, I'm thinking, like, I'm looking at the colours, and like anything that's just that is this bright blue in the final render will emit light, so it will glow in the final render. So, like, he also has this, where is it there? I'm not sure will this work now. I have an opacity thing on this, but it'll glow out from underneath the helmet where that blue is around the neck and all that kind of stuff. So colouring it in ZBrush is really helpful. Nah, it's not really showing it properly, but anyway, you get the idea. Yeah, so colouring it in ZBrush is really helpful, and this is a really good example of, like, how I would approach that. It's everything is kept as low poly as possible, and you seen how I did that pocket, like just using a general shape and extracting a plane, and then once you have the plane extracted and that's nice and low poly, and it's easier to get nice edge flow on a plane rather than with thickness. And then you just extrude it, and then you get the right amount of, the same amount of thickness, a uniform thickness all the way around, which is much better and cleaner again. So it's all in the name of being clean. But the thing is, even if you don't want to, even if you're not making a stylized character, this is still applicable because you're in control of the shapes. So it's not lumpy and bumpy because of the approach I took. You know, if I want that, it's lumpy and bumpy because I made a shape, got the right primary shape, primary form, and then where I wanted intentional lumps and bumps, I added it in. You know what I mean? So that's always good. So either way, you know, and I find it actually just a fast way to work too. So yeah, so we've done a bunch of low poly box modeling in ZBrush today, so you can see now how that works, and it's a very important and very good way to work. Very nice clean way to work. So that's essentially, that's in essence, this stream is the secret to how I sculpt, essentially. This particular stream, because of how I showed you how I do that. That's the mindset behind it all. Time, yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah, we didn't. Okay, so we didn't get into the sculpting of this a little bit. So okay. Let's do we have enough support loops there, I think. Yeah, should be fine. We will, just to give you a brief idea before we hit the road for the night, how we do this. I'm gonna have to go inside, because if I go out I'm just extruding through too much stuff, so I'm gonna go in. So I'm extruding backwards essentially, which, because double is in now, the normals are flipped. So you can see through the normals. So you just have to flip them again, like I showed you earlier, through display properties. There's flip and double. And now you can see this as thickness. You can even just inflate it by 1 just to give you that extra little bit. I think actually, so I've just masked that inside poly and I'm inflating it because I think I want more thickness than. So I'm going to turn off poly group, turn off view mask, so I can see how thick that's going. And then I'm just going to add another support loop. I can't add a support loop there right now. That's a pain. And there. And then I'll need one here. Here. Just to hold these edges where I want them. Add one here. This goes all the way around, so you can see it's adding up there. Just about to point with my finger. Unfortunately, you're not in the room with me, so that's no good. So just, I'm after deleting that inside of this so I can get this piece back to a plane. It's quicker than trying to fix it with thickness, because as well I'm going to change the, if I'm pushing and pulling areas, it's going to waver in, like, so it's not going to be a nice uniform thickness. And again, if I don't want a uniform thickness, I still extrude with a uniform thickness and then mask one side of the extrusion, because it's giving me different poly groups, and then I control where it gets thicker and thinner, so I can control the lines and how much they taper. I don't want it just being wobbly because I didn't pay attention to it or because I did it the wrong way. You know, it's, you should control it, not the software. We're nearly finished now. But I'm quite happy with today's stream. Actually, I think we, especially for anyone trying to get into doing, you know, starting out and trying to do some nice clean work in ZBrush. This stream would actually be very, very helpful, I think. I'm just thinking back, like, if when I was starting, if I had this stream, actually would have been very, very helpful, because it was a long time where I didn't know this stuff and no one was talking about it. I think more people are now. It's funny, for the longest time, like, I kind of came to this way of doing things on my own, and then eventually I started, like, once I had established it already and I knew what way I was doing this, to get what I wanted. Only after that, only after that, like a year or something after that, I was like starting to notice, oh, you kind of do it that way too, to different extents. Like Shane Olsen sculpts similarly to the way I do. He it's different but similar. Different in some ways. And that's the thing. You will have your own way. Like it's not a case of I'm gonna tell you how you should do it. I'm gonna tell you how I do it. You can try that and then develop your own. You know, at least it's a starting point that you can. Well, I kind of like to do this way, or just this slightly different, or whatever. And that's the way it should be. You know, it should never be. You don't have to copy. I mean, at the same time, look, if you see my way and you like it and it works for you, there's no problem with doing that either. Just generally speaking, you tend to, after a while, just find your own footing and find your own way to do it, or at least variations on it. But it's fun. I've been like doing the streams a while. I've also done like you know, I've talked a little bit before about my process, and I've done like interviews for some companies, and they've asked about my process and stuff, and some people have seen it. And now it's quite a while since I've started doing that, and now sometimes I've had people start like working with me that I never knew, and later on in life ended up working with, and they were like, oh yeah, I watched that and I actually do a bunch of stuff the way you do it from watching that, which is, it's really nice, because you know, you just feel useful. You feel useful to, you know, people in the industry and stuff. That's always nice. I want to get this guy so I can mask around here and pull this down like so. No, again, I could get rid of the outside plane again, but we're nearly out of time here, so I'm not going to get too picky. Let's not be completely controlled by the process. There we go. Alright. So, what have we done? Just to recap real quick. We went into the body, just made sure that it was clean, and that we cleaned it up, got rid of the lines. From the last stream, I had fixed this problem that we were having in the mouth corners and stuff. Coloured it slightly. Let's get some thickness on this guy. Let's actually get some thickness on all the clothes here, and we can do a render, and just that's where we'll leave it. We did the belt. We added the belt with the pouch and the buckle. We box modeled that in ZBrush. So if anyone ever tells you box modeling in ZBrush isn't a thing, they don't know what they're talking about. Just get a good bit of thickness on that one. Actually, yeah, like that, and then I want that there, but then I want to... We might be going a bit over something here, but say nothing, lads. don't want the hard edge on the inside. Alright, okay, so there's that done. That's a bit funky there. I have to fix that real quick. Just grab this for a nice little render. And you know, once now the point is here, we've got thickness. Now we can subdivide this like I did on Mr. Freeze. Don't even have to subdivide high yet. So there's a Damien standard. There's the standard brush, just the standard brush. And like that again, like a paintbrush, not like a mouse. Moving away from it as we sculpt. Get a nice stroke to it. Maybe try this thing we were doing earlier, remember? On Mr. Freeze's derriere. Oh. Tapping it with it. I want to be kind of careful of the edges. I don't want to smooth the edges too much or anything. Back to the standard. But this is quite heavy cloth, so think about the cloth that you're using. What kind of cloth it is. You don't want to be adding loads and loads of tiny little wrinkles on something that's really heavy material, because heavy material does not wrinkle. You know, you need really light material to wrinkle a lot like that. So there you go. Shane McLaughlin, good man yourself. No snitches. Yeah, so that's essentially what I'll be doing from here. And with this guy, he's got a big heavy jacket on, so I wouldn't be going super less is more with the wrinkles here. So I'm not going to be sitting here trying to do all these fancy little wrinkles, because it doesn't make sense. And that's where good taste and narrative, remember we said that? Who was the gentleman who said that earlier? Don't see it there. I'm probably after missing a bunch. Sorry about that, guys. I'm trying to get as much in here as I can for you. So sorry if I've missed your questions. Don't if I've missed any questions, feel free to throw them into the comments section. And myself or one of the Pixologic lads will get back to you. Or as many of you as we can, of course. And so let's do a render and we'll call it there then. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've learned something. I certainly did. It's always a pleasure to have a chat with you. But if you enjoyed it, make sure if you can go in, hit that little like button, just so we know that like it's going the right direction. You are enjoying it. It's all going well. Or if you don't, that's fine. I'll know to try and maybe up the ante next time. Or any suggestions you have, feel free to leave that in the comments. You can also subscribe, of course, and that way you'll get to, keep up with the streams for myself, but not only myself, but all the other guys as well. There's a ton of other amazing sculptors doing similar stuff to what I'm doing kind of more detailed, cool monsters and all sorts of you name it, we've got it covered. So it is worth it if you'd like more. It's the place to be. So and for myself, I'll throw on my I'll throw on my skill tree or link tree for yous, and if you want, there it is. All my that's in the chat there is my link tree. So if there's anything, if you want to follow me and anything, all my social media is on that. So if that takes your interest, please do. And thanks again for joining the stream, guys. And I'll chat to you in 2 weeks, and we'll continue on this guy. All right, all the best.